All right, as we cover the headlines here on the Mo News podcast, many of you are often asking questions like, how does it impact me? How does it impact my financial goals this year? I'm trying to buy a house. I'm trying to buy a car. Is this headline from Washington good news or bad news for me? And the answer typically is, well, it depends. It depends on a variety of things. To help get clarity on everything that's going on at this sort of midway point in 2025, we have Sean Pyles and Elizabeth Ayoola. Great to have you two.
Thanks for having us, Mosheh.
They are the co-hosts of NerdWallet's award-winning Smart Money podcast. And I know that at the end of this podcast, we will all be much smarter, or at least have advice to be smarter with our money here.
That's the goal.
Big goals here, guys. I want to get started with a headline we have been tracking, which is tariffs. And we've been watching the headline from the business world as they're like, we're going to have to increase some prices here. We've been watching the headlines from the various economic reports coming out, looking for indications as to how they're impacting consumers. I want to start with what, from your vantage point, you're seeing in terms of prices, consumers, and the impact of tariffs and just the overall state of the economy right now.
One thing that we're seeing right now with back to school shopping season is that a lot of shoppers are changing how they're shopping for things. So we're seeing folks go from maybe heading up Target to a thrift store for what they're going to be buying for their kids this year. But in general, tariffs are hitting different people in different areas. A lot of it depends on where you spend your money. I don't have kids, so I'm not seeing that impact. Elizabeth does have a son. So where you're sitting in this economy will change how you're facing and navigating the tariffs right now, because there's been so much up in the air. They've been announced, they've been pulled back. It's still in flux is the bottom line there.
Elizabeth, how's the back to school shopping going?
Oh my goodness. Do you want to know the truth or you want to know a lie?
Only the truth here on the podcast, Elizabeth.
I have not done my back to school shopping yet. I'm a little terrified of what the bill is going to be. But let me tell you something I learned from last year, which I assume some consumers may end up doing this year since they're trying to cut costs. I only buy what's necessary on that list, because I find you end up buying all the things on the list and spending all this money and they don't even use half of it. So I'm only going to be buying the essentials. I will be heading over to the dollar store and I will be looking for digital coupons as well to help me save money.
One of the areas people are most worried about or most concerned about is groceries. Certainly we have seen an increase over several years now in grocery prices. They continue this year. Are you seeing issues with particular items out there? And what advice have you given folks for how they can think about grocery shopping, given that when you look at your monthly budget, that's usually a pretty significant amount, especially in recent years, that you're spending?
Yeah, I love shopping at the Asian grocery store in my neighborhood, and some prices have gone up given the imports from China. So what you might want to look at is where you can maybe get an alternative or a generic type of a store brand type of the product that you want. Groceries are really tough because it feels like a need, but sometimes it's a want in terms of where you're spending your money. Do you need?
It depends on the aisle, Sean.
Depends on the aisle. Depends on what you're cooking. Depends on your taste in food or your brand loyalty. So you might want to reconsider getting that top of the line item because it's going to be more expensive. Do you really need that, or can you find other ways to save money?
Yeah, and I will add, because I'm shopping for two in my household and my 7-year-old eats a lot, that I have found it can be a hassle, but going to different grocery stores for different items can be extremely helpful. It means more trips, but it means that you could save money. Another thing are grocery store loyalty programs. That has been a lifesaver for me as well. So just signing up for that free card in order to get discounts on items that you buy often can be helpful too.
Is there a catch though with any of those discount cards? Anything that we should be, looking out for depending on the grocery store?
Let me tell you, I thought there was a catch, because at the till, they're like, hey, do you want to sign up for this card? And I'm like, well, what's the cost? Nothing. So I actually started using it and there is no catch. What they want, that's why it's called, I guess, a loyalty program. They just want you to shop with them, which is why they're giving you the discounts.
And they want your personal information. They want to know what you're buying for their own marketing purposes. That's the trade-off, really.
Yeah, you might start getting some more spam emails potentially. That's your downside is your inbox, right?
Yeah.
But a larger question, I think, and you tell me whether this is answerable, because I think even the biggest corporations in America are having a difficult time projecting for the rest of the year, next year, given how in flux things are with tariffs. And obviously, big corporations, trillion-dollar companies, they have to do financial planning, and we and in our homes have to do financial planning. How do you recommend people approach financial planning? Are there any things that you're suggesting people tweak when it comes to planning, or how much they should be putting aside, given how unsettled things are?
I think one of the biggest things for people to look at now, as Sean mentioned earlier, is needs versus wants, right? And paying attention to where they're overspending in their budgets. We cannot predict where tariffs are going to go, where the cost of living is going to go within the next year or two, but you can control your budget. So I know sometimes that's like a dirty word for people and they don't like to think about budgeting, but honestly, that's one of the main things that you can control in this economy.
I've been talking about the uncertainty right now as like a storm cloud in the distance. You see it's there. You don't really know which way it's heading. It might come to you or it might just dissipate. But either way, we recognize something is on the horizon and we can take steps now to prepare for it. So for a lot of people, that's going to mean saving more than you typically would because we don't know what's going to happen to the economy. Hopefully there aren't more job losses, but the most recent job reports haven't looked too great. So take steps now to build your resiliency where you can.
One of the rules of the road I heard from somebody was like have 6 months of expenses and savings. And then after you have that put away, obviously there's debt to take care of, but then have that 6 months, sort of like as a security blanket for yourself. Some people said 3 months, some people said 6 months. In this economy, do you guys have different recommendations or does the 6 months of, your rent payment, mortgage payment, basic bills, is that a good amount to have?
I would say that that's a decent amount to have. That's what we tell our listeners. Obviously, we're not their financial advisors, but 3 to 6 months. For people like me, if you have kids and you have a family or you're a single income household, which I am, 6 months may be safer in case, heavens forbid that you lose your job. But I think sometimes that discourages people because they're like, well, how am I going to begin to save, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, especially in this economy?
Right. That's a lot. I mean, some people are like, you guys are crazy. I like to have 6 months set aside was a lot.
Exactly. But I think people should try not to get tripped up on that and remember that it's a long-term goal. And also an emergency fund is a moving thing. It's for emergencies, right? So you might start the goal and then you have an emergency and you got to spend some money and then it goes lower, right? But I think what can be the key there is automating your emergency savings funds. Let it come out of your paycheck every month and just keep going. Do what you can afford. It's better than nothing at all.
So when you say automate, you're saying that every 2 weeks when you get your paycheck, if you get every 2 weeks, you should automatically have a certain amount going into your savings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ideally, we call that paying yourself first, where before you even really see the money hit your checking account, it's automatically into your savings account. Or for me, I actually have about 6 different savings accounts for different financial goals that I have. I can set up my paycheck, so it's automatically going to each account. And I know that I'm building on my savings goals without having it be something that I can tap into with my checking account.
Well, that's super interesting. You have 6 different savings accounts?
I know, right, Mosh?
Yeah. It sounds more complicated than it actually is, because once you set up the 5 minutes of admin work saying, oh, I want 5% to go toward my wedding fund, or I want 10% to go toward my car fund, then it's just working in the background. And that's the joy of having something automated like this, because we get so caught up thinking, oh, should I be saving for this or should I be saving for that? The more you can put things on autopilot and just have it going, the easier it is.
Set it and forget it.
Absolutely.
I do have something I want to add. This only works, and I'm throwing myself under the bus a little bit here, if you budget. So if you are automating all of your savings, but you're not budgeting and you're overspending, what's going to happen is you're going to keep pulling from those emergency savings and you're not going to get anywhere. So it's important to know how much you're spending and where your money is going so your savings can actually stay in your savings pot until a real emergency.
Yeah, let's talk about budgeting here. I know people in my life, you guys might know them too, who genuinely enjoy it. I have a buddy who's he's obsessed with his Excel personal sheet. He and his wife have meetings on the budget. It's a thing for him. For other people, it is very stressful. It is overwhelming. And, when it comes to, again, if you're running a business, you need to be running a budget. You have your QuickBooks going, you're, doing kind of monthly assessments and then you're doing quarterly reports and a whole variety of things. How do you recommend people approach budgeting personally?
I like that you said personally. Sean, you want to go first?
It is personal. I think for a lot of people, Mosh, like you said, it can depend on their personal style. I like to have a sort of loose budgeting framework where I know where my income and my expenses are going, and I don't have to worry about it too much. But that's also a result of me feeling comfortable with my income and my expenses. For others, if money is tighter, they might really want to know where every single dollar is going. And some folks are just more analytical like that. They want to get into the spreadsheets and just know every single penny. But in general, we talk about the 50, 60-30-20 framework a lot. And I know that given how expensive things are, some folks think it might be outdated. But here's the reason why we like it a lot is because with this framework, you have half of your income going towards covering your needs, your obligations, 30% going towards wants. That's like your fun money, your vacation, whatever it might be, 20% going towards additional debt payments and savings, things like your emergency fund or your retirement. And the idea behind this framework is having financial balance.
50 needs, 30 fun, 20 debt savings future.
Absolutely. And if you find that your needs are taking up 65% of your income, that might be a sign that your finances are out of balance. So where can you make some changes so you can most likely hit those savings goals? Because we all know it's really hard to pull back on the wants. So once you have that framework, you can then think, okay, I know where my money is going in these big categories. How do I want to manage it on an ongoing basis? Do I want a budgeting app like NerdWallet where it's, a high level view broken out by this, or something really granular like you need a budget where every penny is tracked?
Elizabeth, how do you approach it?
This is where me and Sean are twins because I am also a pay yourself first girl. And that's important to me. As Sean said, I think it's really important to budget according to your personality type. Tracking every penny does really stress me out. So I'm just not going to do that. But I will say, maybe over the past year or two, I have had to adjust my paying yourself first because what I would do was automate my retirement savings and also my emergency fund. And then I would just spend the rest on what I wanted to spend it on. But that started not to work when my income changed and basically my income reduced and I was used to spending in the way that I was before my income had changed. And what happened was I started overspending. So what I do now is I still pay myself first, but I go in every single week and check what my spending is to make sure that I'm not going over, my very broad budget here.
Along those lines, is there a hack either of you recommend to folks that you swear by that you've either learned over time, you learned from somebody else when it comes to budgeting and managing things for your personal expenses?
Oh my gosh. Look, I know it's scary, but look at that statement every single week. Look at what you spent. Yes, look at what you've done. So you don't need to feel, you might feel a little shame, but you shouldn't. But really, really look at what you're spending. So
log into your credit card and see what you've done.
Don't ignore it till the end of the month and then be like, who spent all that money? It was you. So log in every week, check what you're spending. And then honestly, what it does for me is it gives me a knee-jerk reaction when I want to go and maybe go out to eat another time or go and buy a new dress. It's like, well, girl, did you see how much you spent this week? Maybe not. So
something that I found to be really helpful in my time at NerdWallet and as a financial planner is just understanding how you can set up the right guardrails for yourself, because so much of money management is basically creating little tricks so that you can do the things that you want to do with your money the right way in an easy way. And so for me, I used to overspend a little bit. And so I now check my credit card account every single week to see how much I've spent. And if I feel like I'm overspending, then I'll pull that back. For other people, maybe they don't want to budget, I'm going to have $100 a month toward going out to eat. They might be more action-based. So in that case, they'd say, okay, I can go out to eat once a week, and that's their limit. So define which way you like to manage your money and just set up some structure around that and kind of make your own rules and follow them.
So we speak here just after, now we're in the back half of 2025. NerdWallet just put out a survey talking about Americans and their financial goals. The good news is 9 out of 10 Americans set a goal for 2025 when it comes to financial goals. The bad news is nearly half of them are not on track to meeting their financial goals. And when we talk about the goals here, it was interesting going through these numbers, guys. Americans' financial goals for 2025, 65% of Americans wanted to save money. 38% of Americans wanted to make more money. That way you don't have to save as much money, right? 35% pay off or pay down debt. 28% invest, 25% improve my credit rating, and then it goes on and so forth. Buy a vehicle, buy a home, start a business, etc. One of the key things here, when we look at the numbers that's preventing people from achieving their goals, when I add the numbers here, about 7 out of 10 Americans say they either have unexpected expenses or their expenses went up in 2025. Are we surprised?
No, absolutely not. We've seen since 2019 that the cost of day-to-day expenses has outpaced income. So we understand that people can't afford savings in general. So this is in line with what we thought we would see, for better or worse.
To those half of Americans, based on your survey, who have not achieved their goals this year, what is something they can now do as they listen to this podcast to sort of hit reset? So, 2025 is not completely lost.
Well, they can start with a financial check-in. or mid-year check-in if they haven't already done one. So as Sean likes to say, you can do it in 30 minutes. I don't know if that's the case for everyone, but what you need to be checking for is your credit report. You need to check your credit score. You also need to look at all your bank statements, see what your balances are for everything. You want to check also if you have, oh, that reminds me, I have a charge that I don't recognize. So you want to check for those so that you can get your money back. So it's just basically sitting down, seeing where your finances are, and then trying to understand where you have gone left or not been able to achieve your goal. And then seeing how you can pivot and adjust your budget so that you can get back on track.
Yeah, exactly. Like Elizabeth said, it can be helpful to go back to those original goals that we set back in January. We always start the year with these really lofty ambitions, like I'm going to max out my 401k or finally get rid of my credit card debt. But then expenses come up or you lose your job or something. Any number of things could happen. You might just want to go on a vacation that costs a lot more than you thought it was going to, and you don't have the money to put where you wanted to. So check in with where you wanted to be at this point and see where you really are. Look at it objectively too, because there can be so much shame tied up in this experience of thinking, oh, I'm a financial failure because I'm not hitting all these targets that everyone else around me is hitting. So just recalibrate and then find a path forward so you can take gradual steps over the next 6 weeks and 6 months to hit those financial goals.
Some people are not math people. Some people find this whole process stressful.
Yeah.
What are tools, whether electronic or human, that people can turn to help them with this process, especially if, like you had a goal for 2023, didn't work out. A goal for 2024 didn't work out. Now you're in 2025, it's not working out. Maybe next year, it's sort of like, the whole thing. I'll start going to the gym next January. What are any tricks, tools, human AI out there that people can utilize to kind of help him here?
We love calculators at NerdWallet, and everyone should love calculators. So I am not the biggest math whiz myself, but calculators are very helpful. So we have calculators to help you break down your savings goals, retirement goals, whatever it is. And I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes because people are not good with math or coming up with the raw numbers themselves, they have a goal, but it's not specific enough. I want to save $10,000. Well, what does that translate to a month, or quarterly? They don't know. So then they're just trying to chase this goal without any real numbers. So I think calculators can be extremely helpful in helping people achieve their goals.
Remember, our math teachers told us growing up, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket.
They lied.
They lied.
Now I have one on my wrist right now.
They lied to us. So just use the calculator and make your life easier. And I will say for myself personally, I'm a visual learner. So if you're anything like me, being able to see those numbers and have them laid out in a pretty calculator does motivate me, because I know, okay, I need to save $1,000 every month in order to get to this goal. So when I'm about to do an impulse spend, I remember, hey, that's going to come out of your money that would help you achieve that goal. And it helps reel me back in.
So you guys have one over on nerdwallet.com?
Yes.
Okay. Sean, any other tools that you're finding useful, or that your clients or friends or family have been using?
I reference calculators a lot because they're super handy. I direct my financial planning clients to our calculators at NerdWallet, even though it's a totally separate entity. But it's just that's a helpful tool. But also, when you're at a certain point in your life, you may want to hire a financial advisor, someone who can look at your finances with an objective lens and help you understand what options you have that you might not fully understand. And frankly, we know that a lot of folks don't want to do the work of mapping out their financial goals or understanding how much they need to contribute to their Roth IRA to have the retirement that they want. That's why paying someone to do this for you can be really helpful, because they can manage where your money is going. Say, hey, yes, maybe you can take this vacation this year to Morocco and have an amazing time, but that might mean you have this much less money to put towards your retirement account. So just giving you this understanding of what you have available before you and also doing some of the legwork for you can be one of the best benefits of hiring a financial advisor.
It's like a personal trainer for your wallet.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It's a great way of putting it.
I'll quickly add that budgeting apps sometimes will break down your goals for you as well. So for people who like apps, using a budgeting app, putting out your numbers there, and then, inputting the goal can help you have a breakdown too, to make it easier.
And you mentioned AI as well, and that can be a helpful jumping off point to think about different strategies, whether you're trying to understand how to pay off your debt or how much you can put toward a retirement account. I don't think it's at the place yet to be a fully reliable tool, given the amount of hallucinations that we see and just dangerous, sycophantic advice that some of these AI tools are spitting out. So I would
say, Mosh, spend it all.
Yeah. So maybe start there and then check out some more reliable tools, talk with a real person to get their advice.
Always a good tip when it comes to AI. Like, it's a starting point. But sometimes you got to fact check. Sometimes you got to reality check. Sometimes you got to yell at the AI being like, what the hell were you thinking? One of the key things we're also monitoring when we talk about the health of the economy, the health of the consumer, is debt. Credit card debt, Student loan debt has been big, obviously, since interest pay, a whole bunch of stuff has elapsed now, and they've brought back payments. There's a lot of concern around that space. Where are we sort of big picture in America right now when it comes to our debt problems, debt concerns? What are you hearing from NerdWallet users and listeners about the debt situation out there?
Well, there's a lot of it. And we're not just talking at the federal level, we're talking about American consumers. Earlier this year, Americans hit a record amount of debt. This was over $18 trillion, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Credit card debt alone was over $1.2 trillion. So there's a lot of it. And over the past few years, we've seen delinquency rates continue to rise. It seems like they've maybe settled a little bit, but they're around 3%, which isn't great. It's around where that was in 2012, I believe. So we're seeing people take on more debt, covering necessities with their debt, and having a harder time keeping up with it.
So if someone is in debt, what is your kind of 1, 2, 3 for how people should proceed? And again, it totally depends, right, on how much debt you're in. If we're talking about, $5 grand, 100 grand, 500 grand, it totally depends. And obviously there's certain life circumstances, whether it's medical debt and other things that, unexpected things that even if you're like, sure, I follow your 6 months advice, but this thing happened to me and now I'm in a whole world of hurt. How to approach paying off that debt, which can seem overwhelming and be overwhelming.
A first step is just knowing what you owe. So go back to the basics of your balances, your interest rates, your minimum payments, see how it fits into that 50, 30, 20 balance that we talked about earlier. If it's out of balance, that's a sign that you can take some action. So then once you understand what you have to pay off, look at different ways to pay it off. A lot of folks will just pay the minimums on their credit cards, and that will almost certainly ensure you're in debt for many, many years because interest is so expensive on your credit card debt. And then find what I often like to say is like the fastest and cheapest way to pay off your debt. If someone has credit card debt that they feel is overwhelming, they can call up their credit card issuer and say, hey, I'm having a pretty hard time with my budget right now. Is there any leeway in this interest rate that might be able to cut your interest rate at least temporarily? Or longer term, you might want to call up a nonprofit credit counseling agency, see if they can help you get a grip on your budget. And if your finances are in a pretty tight place, they could also potentially put you on what's called a debt management plan. This also slashes your interest rate, puts you on a payment plan over time. But if you do that, you're going to want to actually talk with a bankruptcy attorney as well, just to get their gut check on where your financial health is and, again, how you can pay off your debt as fast and as cheaply as possible.
Yeah. So I think in summary, people need to explore all of the different options they have and see which one feels best for them. And that could look different for each person.
On the other side of the coin is, well, if I can't save money, I'd like to make more money. And you guys covered that a bit in your NerdWallet survey. The goal for about 40% of Americans was to make more money this year. According to the survey, 10% of Americans started a side business or second job in 2025. So that's certainly a goal. Honestly, this podcast and Mo News started as sort of just a side thing to keep myself busy and then became the thing. And that's, oftentimes I hear from other entrepreneurs out there. Some go in trying to start a business. Some are just like looking to make a side hustle. How does one approach building that business? How does one approach that side hustle? What are some tips that you like to give folks?
Oh my gosh. So I am a side hustler myself. And I would say what has worked for me is starting with what I'm good at, right? So I look at what my transferable skills are, and I'm always looking for ways to monetize that. So I think that's a low hanging fruit. I know anytime you put that in Google, like what's a good side business, you might see like, go and do Uber Eats or Instacart or all these different kind of things. But I think it's also important to make sure that whatever side business that you're doing is actually going to be monetizing or going to make you money and just not going to suck up all your time. Another thing that I will offer people, because side businesses are not for everyone, is to look at your job. If you're not a business hustler person, look at ways that you can increase your income at work. How can you add more value? Ask for the raise. I know it's really hard, but see if you can get a raise as another alternative kind of to bring in extra income.
You will not get what you don't ask for in the workplace.
Yeah. And if you do want to start a small business, I would suggest thinking about what very unique skills and perspectives you have. Elizabeth does a lot of writing for outlets that speak to her experience. I am starting a financial planning firm that will primarily help people who are queer and a lot of folks who maybe haven't had traditional access to financial planning services, because that's what I feel passionately about. And it's an untapped market. So knowing your strengths, knowing who you know and what you know can be an avenue for you to find new income streams too.
And the finance nerd in me just wants to say this because sometimes people think they're going to make side income and they're not going to pay taxes on that income. You're still going to have to plan, with side income comes sometimes more complicated taxes, especially if you're like me, still working a 9 to 5. So you still have to pay Uncle Sam. And that usually comes through quarterly taxes, or like me, I withhold money from my W-2 just to make sure that I'm not underpaying and don't get penalized by the IRS. So when you're thinking about, I need an extra $5K a month, so I'm going to start this side hustle, make sure you're accounting for taxes as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing. If you're a 1099 employee, is like you're getting paid in full, but some of that needs to go to the government next year, and you got to find a way. I mean, I guess speaking to our earlier conversation, put away what you anticipate your tax bracket's going to be. And that's where, an accountant comes in handy, or whatever software you use for your accounting. Curious, one of the other things beyond tariffs we were following in Washington was that huge piece of legislation that passed this summer, what was dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill. A whole bunch of changes when it comes to taxes. It's nearly 1,000 pages. Any headlines, Sean and Elizabeth? I imagine you haven't had time to read the whole thing, neither have I. But in terms of what people have been asking you about, or things people should be looking for and looking ahead to when it comes to taxes and other things and potential incentives, I've been hearing from people in the real estate world about things they're excited about in there. Any major headlines from that bill?
One that isn't about dollars and cents in your own tax bill so much, that I think has gone underappreciated, is the reduction in consumer protections due to the budget of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau being essentially halved. Between that and the CFPB's other actions throughout the first half of this year and changes at the FTC, I think it's very important for consumers to take steps to protect themselves from fraud and scams. And so that's going to mean things like freezing their credit, don't give out your personal information if you don't have to, be really wary of all inbound communications, because we might see more fraud and less protection for the fraud that you do experience. But on a more practical kind of everyday level, one thing that really stood out to me is the interest deduction on auto loans for new vehicles up to $10,000. So that is a deduction that you don't have to itemize for. And we know that car prices have really gone up over the past few years. Interest rates aren't in a great place right now either. That can be a pretty easy way to get a bit of money back on what you're already spending on your car.
Wait, so Sean, specifically, what will that provision do if you go ahead and can you buy a new car now, or do you wait till next year? And what does that mean to your bottom line?
Yeah, so this is for cars for the tax years or between 2025 and 2028. And this allows you to deduct your income tax obligation by up to $10,000 per year. There are some very specific details around like what kind of car it's going to be. So look into the fine print on this, but this could save you some money on what's already a pretty expensive part of people's budgets.
Elizabeth, anything good, bad, ugly that you've been watching?
Well, I'll just be biased because I was thinking about maybe getting an electric car. So I was sad to see that the EV tax credit is now going on September the 30th. It's sunsetting. I know, heartbroken. And the credit did provide, for anyone who doesn't know, up to $7,500 for qualifying new electric vehicles. And also for homeowners who make green energy changes to their homes, there's a tax credit that's going away for that as well. So that might include home solar tax. Well, it's called the home solar tax credit and the energy efficient home improvement credit. And that's also sunsetting. So for anybody who was thinking about using that, unfortunately, it will be going away this year.
A couple other questions we often hear, and I imagine you do too, is all around investing and retirement, especially as we watch the headlines, the Social Security, is it going to run out of money in 2033? Is it 2034? I mean, it's not a matter of if, but when, unfortunately. And, as Sean, as you described, the consumer protection environment becoming the wild, wild west, and it's all up to ourselves. It's very much what retirement is like in America, more and more, even with Social Security as it exists today, frankly. When it comes to retirement, what are the, major headlines for you right now? What are the major tips that you're telling folks to think about, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, decade by decade there, how you should be approaching retirement?
One thing I always like to emphasize is that the deduction or the reduction in Social Security benefits that's expected to happen in the 2030s is not a done deal yet. Congress could still act on this, and I really would encourage people to make their voices heard if they want to keep these benefits, because I certainly would. And the more we all accept that this is going to happen, I think the more inevitable it is. So let's not have our benefits reduced and call our representatives about that.
Well, right. I think this is an important reminder. I appreciate that, because at the end of the day, Congress reports to us, right? Like, we vote them in, we're their boss. But they do have a tendency, I covered Washington for a number of years, to wait till the last second to get things done, sort of like, high school, but like with the country's financial future. But at the end of the day, it's like they're either going to raise the age, they're going to lower the benefits, or they have to, like, if Democrats, get enough power there, like they'll raise taxes on a certain percentage of Americans in order to fund Social Security.
So that's my soapbox part of it. But on a practical individual level, we know that more and more of this responsibility is falling to us. So know what you might expect to need in retirement. And you can do this by thinking about how much you're making right now. A lot of folks can live off of 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income in retirement. And, there are a lot of numbers that go into estimating how much you might need to save up, how much you might need to be saving on a regular basis, and what you could live off of. We have a handy calculator, again, at NerdWallet that can do a lot of this heavy lifting for you. But that can give you a good place to start from, thinking, okay, if I up my 401k contribution by 2%, how much more flexibility does that give me when I'm in my 60s?
Yeah. And considering we don't know what direction healthcare is going to go in, and just inflation, quite frankly, by the time you retire, we're all going to retire at different years. You want to save as much as possible. So think about whether you're really going to miss that extra, whatever it is, $150 that you put away for retirement. And again, using that calculator really, really inspired me to keep saving and also not pull from my savings.
Yeah. And going back to the survey that you mentioned earlier, we saw in that survey that 12% of folks said that they were too overwhelmed by their retirement goals to even start saving in the first place. And I hear this a lot, that people think that either the world is going to be on fire or saving for retirement is such a monumental task that why bother? And to that, I would say, if you aren't saving for retirement, you are basically locking in a future that is going to be really difficult for yourself. Whereas if you start to save and you take this seriously, you're giving yourself many more options further on. And I think, frankly, you'll be thankful that you made this decision now to do that.
Yeah, it was sort of scary. I mean, you mentioned the 12%, I'm too overwhelmed, plus the 7%, I haven't gotten around to it yet. That's 1 in 5 Americans.
Yeah. And I would say for those people, because I hear that often, I don't know where to start. And I have been that person who didn't know where to start. At least if you're getting a match from your employer, at least start there. That's free money. So if your employer is giving you a 401k match, start there and contribute enough to get that match. We also hear a lot, I don't know what to invest in. We can't tell people what to invest in, of course. That's the job of a financial advisor, but you don't have to do stock picking. I think people assume I have to, become a stock market analyst and know every stock to pick. You can invest in things like index funds and mutual funds, which kind of just are like a basket of stocks, right? So I think just getting started and then improving your strategy as you go along can be a good way to at least start.
Folks also get overwhelmed with the order of operations here, because we're talking about saving 6 months of emergency savings and then saving for retirement and paying off your debt. Doing it all at once can feel very overwhelming. So one strategy that folks can do is just get $1,000 in your emergency fund and then begin to allocate some money toward your retirement savings, just enough to get that match, and then maybe turn to other financial goals like beefing up your emergency fund beyond that $1,000. In reality, most financial emergencies that pop up, whether it's like your car breaking down or your kid gets sick, are going to cost less than $1,000. So just having some kind of pad will help you in the short term so that you don't have to rely on credit card debt to cover that inevitable expense.
Yeah, and again, important caveat: we're not financial advisors here, but ultimately, if you look at the S&P 500, the overall market, you can buy the index fund. And if you look at the last 100 years and you color code them into green years being good, red years being bad, there are many, 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 many more green years than red years. And so long term, it's always a good bet. You're basically betting on the larger economy. You're betting on America. You're betting all the companies out there. And so, that's a bit of the way to think about it, especially as it's overwhelming. Like, well, do I think Apple stock's going to go up, or should I be buying this thing NVIDIA, or should I be, the other thing I was going to mention, or should I be buying Bitcoin? It's like 120,000 as we speak today. How do you guys address crypto on your podcast? And What are your rules of the road when it comes to crypto, since that's all the rage often?
People love shiny objects in the investing world and in life in general. And I think that's how I think about crypto a bit, where it seems like this very alluring way to get in on a financial secret. But I think for right now, there's so much uncertainty in the world of crypto that many people are better off investing for retirement in something like a target date fund or an index fund or a mutual fund. And then if they have some extra money to essentially gamble with and play with and experiment with, that's totally fine. But don't put all your eggs in a very volatile basket is my advice.
Yeah, those target date funds are extremely helpful to look at, because you basically pick the year that you think you're going to retire, and there's a fund that is sort of coordinated the portfolio around that. So if I'm retiring in 2050 or 2060 or 2040 or whatever it may be, there's a whole bunch of funds out there that you can just like, okay, I'm going to go with the 2040 retirement fund.
Yeah, and what's really nice about them too is that when you're younger, it's better to typically invest in riskier stocks because they have a greater potential for return. And then over time, you'll want to have less risky investments, things like bonds. The target date fund automatically rebalances these investments over time. So you don't have to be the one thinking, oh, I've just hit 50. Should I now have X percent more bonds in my portfolio? You don't have to worry about that. It's going on in the background.
Yeah. And one more thing I will add is that I know I did get overwhelmed when I was like, what? I need, I don't know, $5 million to retire. How am I going to save all that? I'm 36. When I started, maybe 32. People need to remember compound interest is going to work in your favor, right? So the number that you're seeing, if you do play with that retirement calculator, is the end goal. But the more you invest over time, your money compounds, which means your money starts making more money, and it has the snowball effect, and then your money is going to grow. But if you don't start today, you don't give yourself enough time for your money to grow.
Right, 3% on 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 500,000. It starts to add up over time, so it's never too late to start.
No.
Yeah. And one last thing I'll add to that as well is make sure you have actually started. We see people who put money into a 401k or an IRA, and then they forget to choose the investment. Just putting money into this account isn't enough. You have to select that actual investment for this all to happen.
So at the end of your latest NerdWallet mid-year report, you have a category, how to achieve your goals in the back half of 2025. And you have a couple key headlines here. Make them smart, all caps smart, SMART. Yep. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And then you have a few other recs. Pivot your plans, find your why, break it up, aim for the good enough. Sean, Elizabeth, I'll ask you to take on one of the above there and explain what they mean and how they can help people the rest of this year and into 2026.
I'll start with SMART goals here. So that is an acronym that you just laid out. I like to add an R to that, to the end, so it's a smarter goal. So the R at the end is rewarded, because we know that positive reinforcement, having that built into what you're doing, makes it more likely that you'll accomplish it. So the idea behind SMART goals is that it is a big goal, like, oh, I want to save $7,000 in my IRA this year. Okay, what does that mean on a monthly basis? How can I measure the amount of my income on a paycheck by paycheck period that's going to be going into this? Is it achievable in the sense that it fits into my budget? Can I realistically put $7,000 into my IRA? And in what time frame am I going to be doing this? Breaking a big kind of nebulous goal into something that's really digestible makes it much more likely to be accomplished. And if you actually enjoy doing it, then it'll make it all the easier because you're having a good time along the way. So that's what we mean by SMART goals and my own take on smarter goals.
I personally love the pivoting your plans. And I think that's so important because of the economic times we're living in. I know so many people who are struggling or maybe have lost a job, looking for a new job, and just had major life changes. So it's so important to be flexible. If you are someone who started the year like, I want to save $10,000, but maybe that's not happening because you just don't have enough to save at the moment, it's important to remember that it's okay to change your goal. That goal can change to $5,000. Many people may feel shame around that, especially high achievers. You may feel disappointed because it's not what you were aiming for, but just remember you're doing the best with what you can, and it's better to save $5,000 than to save nothing. And the same goes for any other financial goal you have, whether that was buying a new car, buying a house. Just show yourself grace and work with what you have where you are.
Incredible advice. I appreciate both of you for joining. If you're looking for more, they can listen to both of you on the Smart Money Podcast.
That's right. NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast.
All right. Well, now that you're done with this episode, folks, head over to the Smart Money Podcast and get your fill. A variety of topics. They have recent episodes on medical debt, more on retirement, housing market, savings bonds. You pretty much break down a lot of the key things out there, a bit that we were able to get to here, but I imagine in a much deeper way.
Yeah, and we rely on folks' financial questions, which makes the show really fun as well. So there's always something new to talk about. And we also have our listeners come on and join us, which makes for a really exciting conversation too.
Well, we'll have you guys back soon.
All right, thanks for
having us. Thank you, Mosh.